All right, hi, this is Paul Slatkis, Good News Planet. This is my lucky day, Ernie Chu. Hi, Ernie, how are you?
Hi, Paul. Glad to be here.
Oh, it's a real pleasure for me. Ernie is a good guy. Let's start with that, because I think that's the most important thing. I think we were talking previously how important it is to, have a good soul. And Ernie's written a book. He's an entrepreneur. He's helped many, many people. In the early days, he even was part of the old stock market at a young age. Member and very well educated, and has an energy company, and the list goes on. And he's talking about soul currency, as a lot of people who are believing in, to the point that I couldn't buy his book over at Barnes and Noble. He's sold out. So lots of good things going on here, and give us a little bit of your background and share what you'd like to share with our audience.
Well, great. I've been alive for probably several more decades than some of the people that work for me, and so when it's always one of these things where they'll say you have to do it this way, and I'll listen, and then I'll realize it's an idea that they came out with because they want it to be right rather than having it as an idea that benefited. So I realized that I had been doing this longer than they had been alive. And so it's been one of these things. My parents were Chinese immigrants. They came over during the war, and because of the communist takeover of the government, they decided not to come back. And I grew up as an American, and they decided not to tell me much about my family, and to have me grow up completely as American as you can grow up. So as we once talked about, I grew up in Westchester County. I moved out of New York City. We originally moved to New York, and a lot of the Chinese immigrant population, including people like I.M. Pei and many other people, all lived around Morningside Heights before it became more integrated into Harlem but it was where the Chinese immigrants were, and many of them then went out to the suburbs, and we went to Chappaqua, and my father was an architect, so we built our own home. So all of this that I see here is very much what we did. We hired a mason and a carpenter, and my father's talent as an architect, and we built our own place. And I was the strongest kid in the 6th grade. I was digging water trenches, and I had a completely American upbringing. I carried the flag in our 4th of July parade. I was a Sunday school teacher. I basically was a Boy Scout at that point. And so
I like that one.
I had a completely American upbringing, and so many years after that, I was pursuing the American dream, which was essentially like every immigrant. You work really hard. You save your money. You basically find a place or a profession to do. And my brother was a doctor, and I was an entrepreneur, which in the Chinese way of looking at it isn't a profession. It's just kind of what you do. But in any event, I was fortunate enough. I found myself was able to write, and so my first job was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and I wrote about the bonds and the new issue market, and not really realizing that was going to be really very important for me during the next few years. And then I basically came around and decided to be involved with the financial markets, because that was something that I really liked to do. But they wouldn't have me because I didn't have the experience. And so one day I managed to talk my way into a firm. And it was a small little firm that when I got off the elevator, I said, boy, I would really like to work here. And it turns out that was a firm that was owned by a guy by the managing partner was a guy by the name of Sandy Weil.
Whoa.
And Sandy basically had a little rule, and that was they never hired anybody unless they had 10 years of experience and whatever. But as it turns out, I really wanted to do it so badly, I wrote them a letter saying, you're making a mistake not hiring me. These are the people I know, whatever. And so about a week later, I get this call from them, not knowing what else had transpired. And they said, come on in, we want to interview you. And
you got a lot of sun on you. I just want, we're out here in my backyard here, and just want everybody to know. So we got some trees up here and so on and so forth. Excuse me for interrupting you, but I just thought I would tell the audience that the sun will keep changing, but I thought it would be nice to be back here, sort of like an Asian garden.
It's beautiful.
But on the camera, I see we have a little sun thing. So we just, we like to have an open communication. I think you even had a interactive video company or something too. So you understand, hi friends, we're all in this together, right?
Absolutely. And so one of the things that happened in between the time I wrote the letter and the time the second interview, after they told me, don't even get your hopes up, we never hire anybody, we're only doing this as a favor to somebody. It turns out that Sandy Weil's rabbi comes to him. And it's one of you may have known Rabbi Joachim Prince. Well, he was well known at the time, had a very big congregation. And he had a son by the name of Jonathan. And Jonathan didn't really want to follow in his father's footsteps, even though he was a rabbi. He wanted to be a stockbroker.
Okay.
So he basically talked to Sandy and he said, I can't really overtly do anything with the people in my church, but Jonathan obviously is well known and a lot of people know him and they like him and they've known him since he was a kid. Do you think you might find a place in the organization for him? Well, Jonathan didn't have any experience either, probably had less than I did. And so when I came in there, they were talking about, they didn't have a training program, but they were talking about bringing in some new talent, quote unquote. And so they figured, hey, here's this son of the rabbi. He knows all the important people in New York. And here's this Chinese kid who knows a lot of shipping people and a lot of this and stuff. Why don't we just bring get these two guys in? Let's see how they do. And it's not going to cost us that much. And who knows, they could be stars. So that was the beginning of my Wall Street career. And within 2.5 years, I was, and another firm, I was basically a member of the New York Stock Exchange. I became an allied member of the exchange, stockholder in a New York Stock Exchange firm, and here I was basically sort of living the American dream, and that was sort of the very beginning of little did I know that there was a lot more to follow, and I would start to learn about my family, and I'd start to learn about myself, and I thought, well, that was the pretty good place to even end up in, but that was turning out to be just the beginning.
Well, and you've had such a varied career, but I think you've always been in a spiritual path. And I don't know how did that evolve? Where did that come from? Because usually if you say somebody was a member of the New York Stock Exchange, usually your spiritual path isn't the next word you say. So I don't know, because your book Soul Currency, and your spiritual ways and your spiritual ministry and. So much in, we were talking about the DNA and genomes and earlier, and where does that come from?
I think that probably I had an interest in the spiritual side of things since I was a kid. But I grew up, my upbringing, of course, was typically American, so, of course, I didn't come from one of the 12 lost tribes of Israel, so the 13th tribe or whatever. So I was into it, and we became we joined the Congregational Church, the big church up on the hill with the white steeple and the Crusaders' cross, the Crusaders' shield, and I basically got my start there, and I had a lot of questions, and I would sit and ask questions, and they just weren't really satisfying, and they were within the, what the Bible says, what this says, what that says. They were more stock answers. And I lived with that for a while because there wasn't any reason not to. It's just that as time evolved, there seemed to be a greater thing, and I think one of the impetuses was that I decided to go to take my junior year in India. And so I spent that junior year in India, and that sort of catalyzed a lot of things that I had been thinking about. I had been actually thinking about things that were occurring, and when I came back, it gave me a lot more of a broader view to understand Hinduism, to understand some of the things that I couldn't explain, like Sai Baba creating what they call vibhuti, which is in a sense things out of energy. It appears that he's creating it out of nothing, but yet there's something that is all around us at all times. And so as I began to do that, I brought a lot of my Wall Street, shall we say, skepticism in there. But it was a healthy skepticism. It wasn't one that was just saying, well, it can't exist because I can't believe it. It was more that I was believing it, but I needed to really have reinforcements that would connect to what I really understood the world to be. And so my view of the world basically started to grow. It has always been growing. So I would, for instance, have a Filipino healer operate on me and stick his hands in there, and I know that he did it. I wasn't dreaming. I could actually see he had opened the body, and then when he closed it, it was as nothing happened. But I knew something had. And then I said, well, how does this fit in with what I know? How does this fit in with my concept of God? How does this fit in with why I'm here? And I went through a lot of time. Every time I would come across something like that, I would have to start asking myself, how do I move these pieces around so that it all makes sense to me in the world? And so I'm still doing that, but obviously a lot of those pieces now, I have a lot more pieces to really understand that. I have recently had the opportunity to go to visit John of God, and that was something that I had actually been prepared for unknowingly, because I had actually seen other people who did things that were similar, and he was sort of the successor, the work carried on that type of work, which was a kind of a healing work that uses, in a sense, entities, and it uses invisible spirits to work on this, and he actually goes into trance. Now, for many people watching this and stuff like that, this is old hat, but for me, it was something that I, come from a Wall Street way of seeing things, and there's a certain cynicism that people on Wall Street have. Might be one of the understatements of the world.